Time now to turn our attention to the international newspapers here on France 24. Elena's with us here in the studio, starting off with the Palestinian bid for statehood at the UN. It's been our top story most of the morning. What are the international papers saying about it, though?
Well, let's kick off with the German magazine Der Spiegel, because they've interviewed the Palestinian Prime Minister Salam Fayyad this morning. Now, he says to them that not only is Palestine ready for statehood at the UN, now that they've got a reformed administration, they've cracked down on terrorism, they've got better infrastructure, but also, although it may not happen in his lifetime, the independence of Palestine is inevitable. They say Israel can only postpone it for so long. The two-state solution eventually, he says, is inevitable. He also links the Palestinian statehood bid to the Arab Spring, saying that really the Arab Spring started in Palestine because people there have been pushing for fair rights for their citizens for a long, long time. He says now that in Libya people have them, it's time for the place where it all started to get their citizenship rights. He does also address the Israeli worry that this bid at the UN will cause more violence and unrest in Palestine. He says they're committed to non-violence, but the people still have a right to express themselves through protest, and if that turns into violence, then the Israeli authorities will only have themselves to blame. He also addresses the Israeli threat to withhold Palestinians' taxes, which are of course collected by Israel and then handed over to the Palestinian Authority. Now, he says they have got enough funding from other Middle Eastern countries who back them to make up most of that shortfall, so he's not so worried about it.
A lot of people, though, saying that would be disastrous if they were to lose that money, and that's picked up by the Jerusalem Post.
Yes, they've got an article which is actually calling for Israel to withhold the Palestinians' taxes. And this is a pretty right-wing paper, but it's quite important to bear in mind that while it might be a different point of view to what most international observers say, this is Netanyahu's key constituency, people who hold this point of view. So it is important. The article says that that money is used to support terrorism and that the Palestinians won't stop until the Israeli state ceases to exist. And Netanyahu, of course, is playing to a constituency that does believe that.
So we've got one side over here, one side over here, and the US in the middle, sort of kind of trying desperately to stick the two together, aren't they?
Yes, that's what the more left-wing Israeli paper Haaretz says. Their headline is Obama stuck between a veto and a hard place. They say whatever he does, he can please nobody. And it's not really his fault. It's the Israeli and Palestinian faults for refusing to talk to one another across a negotiating table. They say, of course, if he vetoes this bid, he'll be accused of not really believing in Arab democracy. If he doesn't, then he's got a huge Jewish constituency at home who will be furious with him for not backing Israel every step of the way. But Haaretz says he just can't be blamed. It's the two camps that should be talking to one another instead.
We've also been hearing a lot in the bulletin about the explosion of violence in Yemen, and that's getting quite a bit of coverage as well.
Yes, there's an interesting article in The Atlantic which calls Yemen the new Libya. They say that in Yemen, as in Libya, when that international intervention was launched back in March, there's a corrupt government that are attacking and massacring their own people. They actually say that in Yemen there's a more coherent opposition than there was in Libya when that intervention started back in March. And they also say that the threat of Islamism in Yemen has long been overstated. They say the opposition in Yemen is actually secular and that Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula isn't as powerful as many people say. So they say that now that Libya has let the cat out of the bag, it's time for the international community to intervene in Yemen.
Greece, an exclusive that you've pulled out?
Super quickly, in the paper Cathy Marini, they say the government is preparing for a referendum on whether or not Greece should stay in the euro. They say Papandreou is hoping a yes would give him a mandate to continue with more harsh austerity measures. His office have not confirmed this rumour, but they're refusing to deny it either.
And phone hacking, it's on the front pages in the UK again.
Yes, very quickly, let's look at the front page of The Independent. They say the Dowler family is to take £3 million from Murdoch. This is in exchange for dropping their court case against News International for, of course, hacking the phone of that abducted teenager, Millie Dowler. The paper says, though, that there are so many other people still pursuing News International through the courts over phone hacking that the cost for them is going to add up to an awful lot more than the £20 million the firm has set aside.
Goes without saying, packed newspapers as ever this morning. Elena guiding us through them perfectly there here on France 24.